Hello everyone, my name is Pruitt, and I am the author of the two books that you see here, Saving the World and Meaning It, One Man's Honest Attempt to Save the World, and Life's Tough, People Need Answers. Recently, following the coronavirus, or what I call 311 because it was officially announced on March the 11th of 2020, some of the chapters from my recent books have become very popular and discovered to be a big help to people struggling from hardships, anxiety, and depression from the coronavirus. A much larger percentage of the people that will be here for help will be people that never had the coronavirus at all. They're just struggling from the losses and the damage that it's done so far. I want you to be comfortable and relaxed while you're here with me today, because I'm going to ask you to look at life a little bit differently than you have before in order to see some things that you never thought you could see. I'm 56 years old now, and when I was 16 years old, 40 years ago, I began my studies on human behavior and also subjects like racism, discrimination, and oppression. And even though you don't really want to be here for help, you've really come to the right place for help, and I can assure you of that. My mom was a nurse in the early part of her life, a medical nurse, and then she became a psychiatric nurse in the later part of her life, and I became very fascinated in the things that she was up to and how she saved so many lives and changed so many lives drastically for the good. I've been a humanitarian of huge proportions all my life, and I want you to know it's a pleasure to be here for you today. I feel like my calling has finally come, and the Lord has said, Bo, it's your time to do your thing. So let's get going, shall we? Due to the unforeseen rampant mental damage following 311, this was a must-do humanitarian effort that could not and cannot be overlooked. This is mandatory right now, and just one of those things where no is not an acceptable answer, because the certain result will be the loss of millions of lives to depression, suicide, or worse, deaths from loss of control and hardships. When life and society press us, the mind eventually gets weak. And when the mind gets weak, the body follows. And when the mind and body are broken down enough, we die. Right now, we don't realize we are all in a situation where we cannot escape seeing and hearing about coronavirus. It's on the news. Almost every TV show has home footage of quarantine. We see the mask all over in public. Most conversations we have involve coronavirus. All we are exposed to now is coronavirus. We all know this is happening, but what we don't realize is that it's eaten away at the mental state of every individual on this planet. We feel the pain, but we don't understand the magnitude of the mental damage to every single one of us. No one is excluded this time. No one is unaffected. And without this material, every single one of us will need counseling long before this is over. Not after it's over, long before. Section 1. The most important lesson all of us could have ever learned in school or life was never taught to any of us. No one ever told us or taught us a lesson that becomes permanently embedded in our mind, like the ABCs, on how the human mind actually works. No one ever explains that what we think about is our choice, and no one ever explains that what we think about the most in life is what's most likely to happen. We have all heard things like, you are in control of your own destiny, or your conscience creates reality, or you can do anything you set your mind to, or your thoughts manifest their way into your life. But no one ever explains to us what this really means and how it really happens step by step. What they should have taught us is, is that we have our choice of what we think about and when we think about it. This includes times when someone makes you angry, when you're feeling sad or depressed, or when tragedy, death, and hardship are knocking you down. And no one ever explained to us that when it all goes bad, we can choose to start thinking about a cheeseburger right at that moment if we want to. And even better, if you think about that cheeseburger long enough and you decide you want that cheeseburger, a cheeseburger will soon make its way into your life and into your mouth. This is how life works. This is how your mind actually works. This is the lesson that you were never taught. And that's why this is the most important lesson that any of us will ever learn in life. You know, forever and ever, psychologists and counselors have boasted their own success by getting patients to open up and talk about the problem as a means of release. But once we walk away from counseling, the problem usually works its way back into our lives. The counselors never teach us that we can just simply choose to think about what we want, our future, or even a cheeseburger. And they certainly don't tell us that a cheeseburger will appear if we think about it long enough. Why do you think professional athletes became professionals? It's all they could think about. They were absolutely obsessed with being a pro, and that's why it happened. Here's proof. Google the LeBron James, the new commercial that he has out on TV about the power of the mind and the importance of training the mind to bring you what you want. You can want happiness, you can want success, or you can want a cheeseburger. You can amaze yourself with what will come to you when you spend lots of time thinking about it. Again, this is how life actually works. This is how the mind actually works. It's just a shame it was never taught us in that term so we could understand the full meaning until now. And that's section 1. But let me tell you something, it was labeled such for a reason. And that's because understanding that you're in control of what you think about and when you think about it is the number one tool any of us have for fixing and handling life's problems. Okay, section 2. I have entitled, Grateful is not just a word. You need to practice grateful every day and every night. I have been through a severe loss. I lost my beloved wife of 16 years to pancreas cancer. I was a broken man with no hope at one time. During the morning time, when my wife had passed, I was spending 2 to 3 hours in bed in the morning trying to decide if today would be my last or not. I pondered every method of suicide, from stabbing myself in the heart where it hurt the most, to jumping off a bridge into the water that I love so much. But something shut all these feelings down completely. One night I was sitting in our place, of course it was me by myself then, and I was trying to decide what I would do with all the stuff that we had accumulated over the 16 years we were together. Man, I had 20 pounds probably of knives, forks, and spoons, for God's sakes. Just the thought of that as a start was overwhelming. And then I began to look around at all the little things and realized that at some time in our lives we wanted these things. We wanted all these things, and here they all are. The cupboard had food in it. I had loads of dishes, some furniture, and literally, hundreds of little household goods. And for some reason, I just sat down and closed my eyes, and I started to pray about how grateful I was to have all these things. They were all things I wanted at one time, and now I have them. And then I began to realize that if I wanted all these things and got them, I can want happiness and get that too, just by thinking about it. Let me tell you something. The next day, brought such a powerful turnaround in my attitude that I was very much ready to say how thankful and grateful I was for the smallest things I could think of from that night on. I'm telling you, it cured me. As God is my witness, it really works. I went from someone in such a weak state of mind to someone powerful enough to try to take on saving the world. It only takes 2 nights of mulling over every little thing you have, including pencils, pens, knickknacks, paper products, etc., to be addicted to the results. I've gotten to the point now where I can even make myself remember what I use the knives and forks for, and I say how grateful I am for it. Even if I only used a knife to spread mayo on a sandwich or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I say how grateful I was to have the knife and the peanut butter and the jelly and the bread. I even say how grateful I am for empty containers that I can see in the trash, and how lucky I was to have had them. Even though they're empty now, I still got to have the contents that was in them. You're going to have a few of your own little things to add to this list, I'm sure. Include everything you can think of, including things you can't see, like in the closets, clothes, socks, tools, toys, Christmas ornaments. And never forget that these are all things you wanted one time, and now you have them. So now that you know about wanting, you can have almost anything you want, which includes happiness. Depression comes to us in many forms. It can be from loss, hardship, or death. It can come from a breakup. It can come from illness, both physical and mental. It can come from trauma. It can even come from being sad for someone else. But no matter why you're sad or even deeply depressed, if you have the power to be focused on the depression and the damage it's doing, you also have the power to cure yourself by thinking about what you want instead of what you don't want. Grasping this with PTSD can be difficult at first, but please give yourself the same honor you gave our country and start focusing on being extra grateful for everything that you can think of. And remember that what you think about is your choice. And remember, wanting is not a bad or a selfish thing. It's not selfish to want to be happy, or to want to pay a bill, or to want to drive a decent car, and even have a couple of luxuries. And it's also not selfish to want to be healthy and to have good relationships with others. Engage in the grateful miracle every night and want to be happy. You will be relieved, I promise you. Just believe it is so, and the universe will bring it to you, and an instant life change can actually happen right now. Now, if you ever need a refresher on this, see my video on YouTube entitled Bo Pruitt's One-Page Cure for Depression. If you have to, go there every night at bedtime until you have it down pat and in control. Okay, here we go. Section 3. Jump in and hang on. Cognitive, behavioral, and psychotherapy simplified. Now, these are the 3 main existing clinical depression therapies, and understanding how this list ties in with everything we're trying to achieve here is kind of monumental. You're hearing about human behavior, and when you hear about this list, you'll see that the word behavior is key in every therapy. As I said, I've been studying depression, human behavior, racism, and discrimination for over 40 years. And the first thing we're going to talk about here is cognitive behavior. And what I found really interesting is that cognitive behavioral therapy is how this new company, Noom, is getting people to lose all this weight. And I almost felt violated because their methods of using your mind to lose weight is very prominent in my first book written 4 years ago. But anyway, cognitive therapy is a talk therapy focused on modifying negative thoughts, behavior, and emotional responses associated with psychological distress. Now, behavioral therapy is a therapy focused on modifying harmful behaviors associated with psychological distress. And psychotherapy is the treatment of mental or behavioral disorders through talk therapy. So think about this a minute. You were already becoming a master of your own behavior before we got this far. Now you have proof that understanding how to control your thoughts reflects in your behavior, your disposition, your happiness, and your success. The three therapies we just discussed are how they cure depression. What I'm trying to get you to realize is that you're developing the skills to incorporate these three therapies into your daily lives on your own. I'm going to make you a promise, and I really, really mean this. If you spend 5 minutes a night on your detailed grateful list and stay mindful of the three therapies of clinical behavior treatments and how they relate to your thought control, you'll see things differently in less than a week. And that's my guarantee to you. So now we need some money to help things get a little bit better, right? And that's why we have Section 4. Finding and making your own money and financial hardship. They both go hand in hand, right? If you spend your time thinking about the damage that the bills have done, you'll find yourself with more bills and more debt. But if you spend your time thinking about the fact that you want to pay those bills and a way to make it happen, the bills will be paid much quicker. In case you haven't figured out by now, all you have to do to obtain more money is to spend a lot of time thinking about it and thinking about what you want. Thinking about what you want out of life is how all this works. And thinking about what you want is not based on material things all the times by any means. Sometimes wanting happiness, good health, and a great relationship are things that we want. Sometimes wanting and getting are instant. Here's an example, like at the grocery store. You walk by something on the shelf and you say to yourself, I want that. And the next thing you know, it's in the cart and it's yours. And that could happen countless times in a very short period just on a regular trip to the store, especially if you're hungry. But right now, we're talking money, greenbacks and Benjamins. I've entitled this little section in Section 4, Money for the Kids and Adults. I can't tell you how many times I got myself out of tight spots just by selling something. I learned kind of early in life that you can make money on things, selling things that you just don't need anymore at a yard sale or a flea market. And later on I learned that you can make things on your own, using your own imagination, and sell them the same way. You can make money from a stool that you made out of a stump you found in the woods. I believe that we all should have learned as a child, going on field trips and all at school, to a flea market and yard sales for buying purposes. And then they should have to go to another outing where they actually sell the item for profit. Teachers and parents would assist with eBay and Google searches to help determine real sold values on these items these kids found. The other lesson we all should have learned, and the children should learn as well, is that they need to learn to produce at least 2 of the exact same products as if they were on a mini production line. You know, cut assemble, glue, paint, and then these pieces must be sold one way or another. They must be sold. Then you can determine how much it costs to make the two pieces and how much they sold for. Your cost is your cost, and your profit is your profit. These lessons would lead to so much less homelessness when they're coming up in life. This lesson will embed in their mind that they never have to be completely out of money. This lesson will carry them and you through every single really tough time there is. We can all make our own money. So if it's money you need, just spend a lot of time thinking about it. Think about how you're going to get this money. And when you find yourself slipping and thinking about the damage no money has done, remember you own the ability to choose what you think about. Use it. Alright, let's get into this fun something from nothing art project. And at the end of this video, I'm going to include a little bit more detail and show you some of my work on this. But let's go through this now. To practice making your own money, I want you to make something out of nothing and sell it for $3 the first time. I don't care if it's $2 or even $1. I just want you to make something out of nothing and sell it for $2 or $3. Find an old cardboard box and make yourself a train house or a building for a train garden. Cut the box into pieces, forming the walls and the roof, and then cut some trim pieces, and then glue everything together and make it look like a little train house, and then decorate it with paint, colored paper, fabric, markers, or whatever you have available. These buildings are very strong sellers because a big prize at any flea market or yard sale would be a box full of train stuff. And any train guy that comes along and sees your little house for $2 or $3 is going to snap it right up. Another good option, which you'll see some of my work that relates to this at the end as well. Make an animal or a sculpture of any kind using paper mache. I use for a simple batch 1 cup of flour, a 1/4 cup of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of wood glue, and then you want to add water until it's like a thin to medium pancake batter texture, and you want to make sure there are no lumps in it. And then decorate that with paint. Colored paper, again, fabric, markers, or whatever you have available. Next, have a yard sale or attend a flea market and sell these things cheaply the first time. You want to see the process go all the way through. You do this to prove to yourself that it can be done on a small scale. And this step will turn the light on, which leads to larger projects for more money. Be sure you take unwanted and unused items along with you to sell when it's time to sell the things that you've made, just as fillers to fill in around the nice things that you've made. And finally, section 5. This is where we step into a little bit of a new world. Getting back together. As I explained, I used to write a lot about racism, discrimination, and oppression, and I still do. It's in my most recent book. And racism is just plain old stupid. I mean, for God's sakes, if people could only stop and realize what it makes us all look like. And when I say all, I mean all. And I'm so glad, you know, my teachings here, what we're looking at right now that everyone knows how to make their own money and sell their own products and services, the world can be a little bit more equal. None of us really have any more excuses for saying, I can't, when I just told you how. However, we're not out of the woods yet. because they're threats to us that are worse than each other. You know, as I mentioned, I've been an advocate to end racism ever since I was 16 years old. And I wish there were words that everyone would take notice of that would start the beginning to an end of all this. Like I said, I'm 56 years old now, and I'm very sorry to say it's taken me this long to discover what really needs to be said. And what needs to be said is, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry for all of my ancestors' actions where slavery and discrimination is concerned. It was wrong, and it should have never taken place. If I could take the blame for my entire race upon my shoulders in order to bring just a sample of peace, I would. And those that still discriminate by race, creed, color, origin, etc., all share one thing in common. They all know it's wrong, and they all know they should not be doing it. This is what happened. Someone told my ancestors that they could sail a ship to another country and find strong workers to work the plantations in order to further development of the United States of America. And that was a good idea. But the forceful nature, poor treatment, and lack of equality in reward for the work that was done was wrong. And the lack of equality and acceptance in society was also wrong. And as I mentioned above, we all know it's wrong. Since then, it's not been pretty at all. However, slavery was rightfully outlawed. Laws have been put into place to encourage equality and less discrimination, and anyone can be anything they want if they just set their mind to it. Free trade, technology, and creative trades have made it where no one has anyone to blame for lack of success but themselves. We can't claim no one will give us a job as a reason for failure any longer. Oppression still exists, but it does not have to exist in your own self-employed world. You can use your own mind to create whatever you want, and you can sell it on the internet, and no one will ever know who the hell you are. Today is the day that you can take charge of your own life. And whatever you spend the most time thinking about is exactly what will happen. We can think about the damage and get more of it, or we can think about success and make it happen. The choice really is ours now. Making everyone realize that we're in control of our own thoughts is the key to making everyone realize that we're in charge of our own success or our own failure. You know what the consequences are if we don't stop with the racism and carrying on between us? Our worst fault as a nation is that if we don't stop all fighting against ourselves, we're only setting ourselves up for our own complete and infinite demise. This includes the citizens and the politicians all fighting among each other. It's disgusting. Our enemies are watching. They have TVs just like we do, and they see what we're doing, and they see it as a weakness. They are seeing you as a spoiled, rotten, torn apart country ripping itself apart at the seams. And if you don't live in the USA, you're very likely to view us as the laziest, overweight, spoiled, rotten bunch of folks on the planet. They do know the United States has the greatest country on the globe, but they wonder why we take it for granted so much and seem so careless and ungrateful for any of it. And those that don't like us but want what we have are laughing at our weakness. And you know who I'm talking about, our enemies. I don't know how much you know about European war and history, but whenever they spot this type of weakness, it's a sign to attack and take over, and it's not out of the question. While we fight amongst ourselves, They're planning a way to come take it from us so they can be the best. They will not hesitate to wipe out our mothers, our children, and ourselves. If you think racism is brutal, wait till you see what it can lead to. Will we stop it before it's too late? Will there be words that someone will finally take notice of? I am sorry, because no one's going to be worried about color, sex, or creed when we're all running for our lives. Think about that, and then decide how important it'll be when you're the one running for your own life. The pamphlet or book or materials that you're receiving here were published in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. We have all been socially distanced for a while now. So when we all come back together, we need to be aware of what we learned here today. We need to come back together much stronger and much wiser than ever before. May God bless each and every one of you, and I love each and every one of you as well. Here's a little extra bit to give you some more good ideas on making your own money. These are things that I made out of nothing. Just junky old bits of stuff around the house and the yard. Some of it was made from paper mache with old newspapers. And of course, all these things have at least some monetary value today, and they supplement my income when things are slow. And that's not ever uncommon for me, because as you see, all my books are free. I could afford new teeth to chew my food with if I charged for the thousands of books I've given away. But saving lives is more important right now, and especially today with the big C, or the coronavirus, or 311 as we referred to it earlier. Many millions of things like this were made in the time of the First Depression that ended in 1933. We refer to some of it as folk art, tramp art, etc. Now every piece you can find of that old stuff that survived is worth money. But you know what? It was also worth money the second it was completed many years ago, but the artists didn't have the internet that we do, and millions of buyers that have access to it as well. So, if you're in real distress from coronavirus, you probably already have the glue and scissors out by now. The rest of the information attached here is just as valuable. No, actually it's even more valuable, because this is literally thousands of lives that will be lost monthly from depression if they don't get this. But I know this to be very important to you. I know this because the ones that are still living thank me and send me thanks every single day. The way I see all this is that it's not fair to charge money to save someone's life with words, and it crushes me every day when I know someone's not going to make it through the night without this material, and I've been giving it away all along. All of my books and materials are 100% humanitarian, like the materials you are seeing here. But keeping a quick, simple, easy format like this is going to be the most effective method of domestic mental help for our fairly short attention span American public. I want you to pass this on to absolutely everyone that you know, regardless of what extent they're suffering from this, because this is what it's going to take, or we're all going to need mental help at the end of it. You know, parents have said that my teaching on how the mind actually works should be taught in public schools in a weekend or a night course for children and parents to take together. Old Southern preachers that normally never change their ways say my interpretation of what the Bible was actually written for is monumental to Christians worldwide. Soldiers with PTSD have regained control of their thoughts and their minds and their lives due to my materials. People have told me they got my materials on depression just in time. A policeman read my book and tried to convince the big media to take notice, and policemen don't normally put themselves out there like that. Once a soldier tells you that you've helped them cure their mind, and someone tells you that they got the book just in time, would you quit? When a parent of a child that you've never met before puts enough faith in you to tell you that your materials belong in her child's school system, that also makes it difficult to quit. This Something from Nothing art project will open doors of all sizes for everyone. It's not all about little cardboard houses. Some of you will even end up in businesses for yourselves that you never dreamed about as a result. Some may just pay for meals. And it was all just junk in the backyard a minute ago. So please, make sure this gets where it needs to go ASAP. You review it daily and be sure that all your friends, family, and loved ones and anyone that you care about surviving through all this, please be sure that they get it. That's my only wish. That's all I want in return, is for it to go on and on. Thank you very much.